a really hard time preparing for the press conference this week. Not many issues in the public domain. Our key opponents in the opposition haven't been saying much, or I should rephrase that. They've been saying a lot, but very little of substance that is worth rebutting. And my friends from the Kaichou News, they continue along the same path, the same theme. Oh, these press conferences are a Stalinist imposition. They shouldn't take place. They're distorting the purpose of public life, and people should boycott their press conferences. The good thing about social media, there are lots of good things and bad things about social media. But the good thing about social media is that today I can speak to thousands of people. So by this evening, more people would have viewed what we discuss here today than the entire viewership or the readership of a particular newspaper. And the weapon of boycott that they've been pushing so hard, boycotting my press conferences, doesn't work or will not work. I think what I say here is inconvenient to the Kaichou News and many in the opposition, so they have to find a way of characterizing it in a negative way. Now, we could easily go back to the era of the Granger administration, when the president in the maybe 5 years had about 2 or 3 press conferences, and he had a few interaction with the state media, you know, these package interactions. We can go back to the era when the minister responsible for the natural resources sector, oil and gas industry, never clarified a single issue on that sector. Neither Granger nor Raphael Trotman, and both were responsible for this sector, or the oil and gas sector, in the 5-year period that they were in office. But not a single one of them ever held a press conference dedicated to answering issues relating to the oil and gas sector. So many issues could not be ventilated. The issue of what led to the signing of the contract, how the contract was rushed through, why with 3 billion barrels of proven reserve they did not negotiate a better contract, why there weren't ring fencing provisions in the contract, why there was no corporate tax, why was the royalty rate so low. All of these matters were not ventilated. And if one thing is consistent about the PPP, is that we had press conferences in opposition to every Thursday, and we spoke about these matters, and we gave our positions on these matters from opposition. The thing about us is not just consistency in action, but consistency in policy. We have maintained our policy postures that we took in opposition. We didn't drift with the wind. So the same positions we had then, because we had taken studied positions on these matters, we've pursued these in government. We argued about that although the contract was very flawed, and we pointed out every single area in which the contract was flawed, and we dedicated ourselves to fixing this in a new PSA, which we have done now. We said, although flawed, we will not renegotiate the contract, and we gave a reason in opposition, and we continue to give a reason today why. And you can go back and find evidence of this if you review the press conferences from the opposition. So we'll continue having these press conferences. We could go back to that era when no one spoke to the media. I thought that people would be happy that the government is at least willing to come and share its views on different issues, and the party is willing to do so. That this lends itself to more freedom of information being disseminated rather than what we had in the past. And if you get more information from public officials and get an opportunity to question a public official or an executive of this party, then people would operate in an environment where at least, even if they don't agree with your views, they would have heard your explanations on matters. But every day it is this, look at it, the press conferences are bad now, and I guess it's because we point out a couple of things that are real. And we do so with consistency. One, that there is one media house that has no interest in reporting the facts or the truth, and that's the Kaichor News. They have no interest in reporting facts or the truth. They're stuck in a time warp with a few worn ideas, and it keeps playing out every week in the newspapers in new form, and they catch some unsuspecting officials like Roysdale Ford when his guard is down, and he makes some silly comments like, oh, we should renegotiate the contract. We need to review the contract to see what the flaws are. Now, tell me, this Roysdale Ford is a lawyer. This contract has been around since 2016. He didn't have time to review the contract as yet. We reviewed it in opposition, and we pointed out exactly the things that we wanted changed, and we changed them in the PSA. We just said we will not renegotiate this contract. He wants a review to be done now to see what's wrong with the contract. And I heard that the APNU had, at Congress Place, they had a seminar for some of their officials on the oil and gas sector. So the seminar, the two presenters were some Lucas, some guy who was at the GRA, and Vincent Adams. And you know what I'm worried about? Is that because so many of the people who attended are mediocre in their understanding of the sector and very impressionable, that a person as jaundiced as Vincent Adams, who has a particular mindset after messing up his tenure at the EPA, that he would influence these very impressionable minds, who are parrot-like minds, who will go in the public domain and repeat what he says without much thought to policy, particularly as to what a government has to do. And they're presenting themselves as the alternative government. So they get into this mindset, or they're fed with little bits of information that they can't stitch together in a complex environment where there are many moving variables, and variables associated with getting the best for the country, ensuring the investors' confidence, making sure that the timeline that and the era in which we're operating is fully understood. And that what I mean by that is an inexorable march to net zero, and the difficulty that companies, particularly for upstream investment in oil and gas sector, have now in raising funds globally. There are many moving parts. Those are just 3 or 4 variables I mentioned. But it's a complex equation, and people can just get a talking point. Like I suspect they gave them a few talking points who went to this seminar, and they just don't understand the complex whole. And I think that is exactly what happened, precisely what happened with Roysdale Ford. Got caught with the Kaichor News, wants to not get bad press, so he just says the most inane thing that comes to his head, which is we must review this contract now, and not recognizing how stupid it sounds. For a party that has signed the contract in government, when they were in government years ago, and for a person who is contending to be the leader of that party now, who is a lawyer by training, a senior counsel at that, and can't even give a studied response to elements of the contract. He needs to do that. So it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for our country that we have this sort of mediocrity when it comes to policy making from the opposition. And it doesn't lend itself to debate that is productive and that will move maybe public policy forward. And so every week, it's in that context that I try to prepare for my press conference. What are the issues that will move us forward? What are the things that our people would be interested in hearing? But then I have to go back to the common denominator, because that seems to be the most recurring thing, which is this constant campaign to mislead and giving people facts that are not really facts, where they think are facts. And this is what APNU has strived on for a very long time. And so we see in this mindset the constant demonization of the other side, that is us basically, based on race. It's always about, it boils down to race. And as I said before, it's painting people in the victim's mentality, particularly Afro-Guyanese. So let us see which is the latest manifestation of this strategy of the PNC, age-old strategy of the PNC. So you know we're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of our independence in Region 10 this year, on the 26th. And I would have thought that this is a national event and that you would want full participation. That it takes the pomp and ceremony to another part of the country, which is normally associated with Georgetown, because the big ceremony then tends to be, historically, used to be in the city. And this follows a pattern that where the government took this activity to Region 2 and Region 9, and this year, Region 10. as part of the bringing people closer to these events and promoting harmony and a sense of patriotism in our people. I recall when it went to Essequibo, people from Linden, the executives of the PNC said, why take it to the Essequibo? PPP is taking it to their support base. Now that it's going to Region 10, they've urged people not to attend. They're urging. So they put out 10 reasons why the people of Linden and Region 10 should not support the government PR stunt in bringing independence activity in Linden. This is the latest manifestation of what I spoke of before, the racism and then the victim's mentality. So one of the reasons they gave is that the government installed an 8-member board of guardians, all Indian individuals aligned with the PPP, and they've been denying people, especially one boy, a 5-year-old suffering from liver disease, public assistance. So it's not 8. They have 8 members here. It's actually 7. But they put in bracket all Indians. So somebody reading this, most people don't know who the members of the Board of Guardians are. Just imagine if you live in Linden and you see this, you would actually think it's true. The fact of the matter is that of the 7 members, 2 are Indo-Guyanese in the Board of Guardians. The rest are made up of Afro-Guyanese, people of mixed descent, and Amerindians. 2 of the 7 are Indo-Guyanese. But they, in a document they're circulating saying all Indians. This is racism. So most people in Linden would know. They'd say, yes, look at this, you know, PPP. Put a board of guardians made up of only Indian people in Linden. That's the lie that they tell. And they've done this all the time. But it's a lie based on race again. So the next thing is the victim's mentality. So they spoke about the disrespect shown towards the executive of the Mayor and Town Council. That we have not done anything in Region 10. That a synthetic track that they started, we haven't even completed it. This is for sports. So what's the story with this synthetic track? APNU announced it. It was supposed to be completed in 2018. It wasn't. They announced it was supposed to be completed in 2019. It never happened. When we got into office, they hadn't even paid for the synthetic track. If you check the payment when it was done under this government to pay for the synthetic track to put in Linden. But we didn't leave it at the synthetic track. We put in on the same ground FIFA compliant lights so you can play football in that area, international football. And we are building 2 stands now, one for $130 million and another for $150 million in the same area. But a blatant lie about the synthetic track. So people would think, oh, the PPP is stalling this, or somehow they built the track. They made a promise like they did in 2015. They promised everything. And they never did it. they have a unique and uncanny capability of not being able to complete anything, to do projects. They can talk a lot, but never could deliver on a real project. So actually, this track is being built by the PPP. We're putting in stands, we're putting in FIFA light, but that's not the end of it. On the Mackenzie side, we're now building several stadia. We're putting in the ICC lights in a multi-purpose ground, spending hundreds of millions, over $500 million being spent on the other side. That is the Mackenzie side. So this is something that, if you look at sports, they lie about that. They then spoke about, in the same 10-point plan, 10 reasons. Another reason is that the government has suspended the Linden Enterprise Network Board, and therefore a number of people can't get their loans. Now, if you know how this lens was created, I have explained this many times, that when I was Minister of Finance, we had an area study. I took my team to Linden, to Region 10. We did an area study. We applied on the European Union facility called CISMIN for a grant. We got about 12 million euros. We established the Linden Economic Advancement Project. That was years ago. That was in the 90s. We changed the law to give special concessions to Region 10, any investment in Region 10. We set up the Linden Enterprise Network, a small loan facility for people, entrepreneurs. We set up a business incubator for small business. We built the road into West Watuka to open up more agricultural lands. All these things were done. This was in the 90s, actually. We worked at this. So when we left the LEN program functioning, APNU bankrupt the program, basically, in the period that they're in office. They handed out these loans to politically connected people, etc., and bankrupted the program. That's the real fact about the LEN program. They killed something that the PPP had established. They then talk about the PPP refusal to continue programs awarding house lots to athletes from Region 10. Just imagine this. This was another point of the 10 reasons. This was point 4 or 5, I miscount now. We refuse to give house lots to athletes. Just imagine the shamefulness of this. So they didn't give house lots to anybody in Region 10. They gave the land to the politically connected. We dealt with this before, including Lowenfield, who got 216 acres of land that you could have done 1,000 house lots on. We got into government. We had to buy land, a plantation next to Linden, that on which we are doing 1,000 plots of land now for the people in Linden, and we're going to start building core homes on those plots. In Amelia's ward, we're doing another 400 lots, spending nearly 600 million there, and they even tried to block it by putting people to squat there. That's 1,400 persons who would get a plot of land or a low-income house from this government in this period. And they're complaining about, oh, we're refusing to give house lots to athletes from Region 10. Then people must stay away from the independence activity because of this. The call center that was functioning, that was one of the things we built to in the period when I was president. That was functioning up to when they got into office. 80 persons are working. They shut it down. in the first couple of months. It was closed. You just go and Google the 2015 period and you'd see the call center in Linden was shut down. We expanded the current call center. I saw the CEO of Go Invest speaking about the sabotage that's taking place now of the facilities there. That was another reason about the call center. That was the fifth or sixth reason, as I said before, I lost count. Another reason that people must stay away, maybe the seventh now, is that we suspended the nursing program in Linden in Region 10. Now, this happened some time ago. What has happened since then? The Minister of Health, Frank Anthony, went down to Linden, and we've opened up for the nursing program a new simulator lab. That was only a matter of months ago. This was for the nursing program. The fact of the matter now is that we have an ongoing program. We have, in addition to that, 200 persons from Region 10 doing the hybrid program now, the nursing program, where they do the theoretical part from home online, and then they will go in to the new simulator lab that we built here to do the practicals. That is the fact. We've expanded the nursing program in Region 10. So it's a pattern. I can go on to every one of the 10 reasons to show you the lies. So two things. One, you're the victim. Look at the big bad government discriminating against you. And what they do is that if we do something in Indo-Guyanese areas, like we build a facility there, they will highlight it. If we build a facility in an Amerindian community, they will do the same. Or in a mixed area where people of mixed origin. And then they will hide all that we're doing in the Afro-Guyanese areas. Although we're doing the same sort of work, like you saw the grung and everything else, the track being done there. They would not say anything about that. To create this victim's mentality, oh, they're doing this more than we're doing for Afro areas. It's to create this victim's mentality as we spoke of earlier. They would never speak when they didn't tell anybody here, or one of the reasons you should go to the activities, because this government is spending $5 billion in Region 10 to subsidize electricity, which it doesn't do for any one of the other 9 regions. The other 9 regions can claim we're discriminating against them, because they're getting practically free electricity. All of these so-called leaders in Linden, they're running their business on subsidized electricity. They wouldn't complain about that. But that doesn't fit into the convenient narrative. And so the lies are intended to keep people away from these activities, so that, because heaven forbids that they will go there and listen to something, your finale speak, or someone else speak, and then they will probably hear the truth. They have to keep people away from the truth. And that's why they have all these trolls and useless people who are masquerading abroad, the Browns and the Solomons and the others, constantly lying to the people. Their big fear is that people find out the truth, because they peddle the untruth. So we have to watch out for this sort of thing. It happens all the time. Now, I didn't want to say much about Congress again, because it seems as though they can't let go of our Congress. was the PPP's 32nd Congress reduced to a farce. Let me reiterate again, it's the biggest Congress ever held by a political party. It had thousands of delegates and observers. It went smoothly. There was no fighting there. Nobody pulled any gun. You remember what happened in the past? Didn't have protesters out there protesting their votes. It happened at the Congress, the last APNU Congress. People, in spite of the fact that they tried to cast a negative light on the arrangements, people were satisfied. Our delegates, they were all upbeat. They gave positive interviews, and these were not people who were taken in a room and locked up by this Marxist-Leninist party to give the positive feedback. They all did so voluntarily. When you look at our Congress, you saw the freedom, the camaraderie, the diversity, the number of women there, and people of every race, and people of every religion, and it was a high point for the PPP. They can't let go of it. Yeah, I think it has scarred them psychologically. And therefore, they just want to keep coming back to this Congress all the time. Imagine our Congress was a farce. The biggest, strongest political party. But what is farcical is they have announced their Congress. This is PNC. And can you imagine the AFC, of all times in the world, they too announced their Congress to be held at the same day that the PNC has its own Congress. Now, this is supposed to be an independent party that wants to carve itself out, its own space out, separate from the PNC, that claims that it has policy independence, which we know is a lie. They are the biggest sycophants, and they're even more corrupt, the leaders of the AFC, than the PNC. And that they're not baggage boys or water boys for the AFC and for the PNC. They like to carve that image out, you know, that we are independent. And then you couldn't pick another day for your Congress, that the same weekend that the PNC is doing it, unless they're going to share eating space or utensils or something like that. Or they would have like or I think, knowing them, they may recycle the voters and delegates because they can't mobilize enough for the other side. So you can go, they'd send some to Congress Place, and then in the next day, which starts on the 28th, the next the 29th, because whilst they'll move them over to the AFC place wherever they're going to be holding their Congress. I think that's the idea. They can recycle well. APNU is great at this sort of thing, recycling voters and stuff like that. But it's a shameful thing. It's utterly shameful. And it proves our point. A lot of people say, oh, you're too harsh on the AFC. That they've always been the lapdog of the PNC, and that their only purpose of trying to get into power was to enjoy the perks. And they willingly, people talk about how they were treated badly with the Cummingsburg Accord and all of that. They prostrated themselves gladly to the PNC. So this was not like their PNC treated them badly. They sold out the people of this country, everyone who voted for them, for perks. For perks. And they will do so again. This party has no meaning in the context of Ghana. It's lost every credibility, every ounce, every shred of credibility it once had, claiming it was a third force and it had these great ideals of bringing people together. That's what their claim, that they wanted to bring people across race. And that's why they could not, they had to spread all these lies to keep people away from the PPP. But now people have seen the truth, that they have no credibility, they don't have any policy, they don't have anything else. I see now Amanza has joined the leadership race. As we predicted, Mahi Paul said he refused nomination. I don't think anyone nominated him. He just said that publicly. I don't think anybody nominated him. You know, I've been trying to find out who nominated him, and it's like the biggest mystery since Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. A long time. It shows my age. Ago. So a long time. You got to get Perry Mason to find out who nominated Mahi Paul to be the leader or in the leadership contest. So it's nothing. Amanza is, in my view, even worse than Norton, by a far way too. In spite of all the put on and the pretense of sophistication, you see the true nature of these individuals in their presentations. You people can look a particular way or carry themselves a particular way. When they open their mouth, then you see how bigoted and often how jaundiced their views are, and often how racial. They have no intention of bringing our people together. They have no intention of working for country. It's all about themselves. So since we have the farce, but Glenn Lal predicted that too. Glenn Lal said both parties are a waste of time. He said the PPP Congress was a farce, and they got some other clowns that they're trying in the PNC Congress. So by implication, he's the real deal. And also, well, God help us if he gets anywhere near anything called policy making. Policy making will make him run stark mad if he's not there already. So I'm not going to deal too much with him. There are a couple of other issues that I wanted to deal with, but today I really don't feel it. Let me just say that there been a review, and I see a lot being written about corruption and all of that. And the government is undertaking a review at every level, the procurement system. And so let me put on notice all of those people who are responsible for procurement in public corporations, statutory bodies, the ministries, regions, central ministry, everywhere, all the way up to the National Tender Board. That we're examining the procurement procedures for compliance and also activities for compliance with the laws. And let me make it clear that if we find that those officers are skirting the provisions of the law, the procurement law, then there shall be consequences for them. because too often we hear here, I sit at Freedom House here, I hear people come and they complain that in some part of this country, remote part of this country, somebody is doing something. People win a bid and then they try, after the bid has been awarded, they try to change specs on the bid. Another issue is payment. People who have done their work and fully submitted their bills and the bills have been certified, some of the accounting officers in the ministries and the clerks, they keep the processing of the payment to people for days on their desk. People have to run there 10 times. They've completed the work. They have to run 10, 15 times to get money for work that they already did. Sometimes they have bank loans. They have other issues to deal with because they've expended money. And they have to run there to these little czars who are processing paper. It could be a clerk, one clerk, who's just holding up a payment because they didn't process the paper on time or send it forward. And then ultimately, sometimes they want money to expedite it when the people should really be receiving their payment. Let me put on notice those people too. So the president has already spoken to the ministers to ensure that this happens in their own sectors. And we're going to take this matter seriously. Whether you're an accounting clerk holding up payment or the procurement officer of the agency, then there will be consequences for everyone. Because sometimes government needs to do this sort of review itself. We have had cases like that. And also, let me say, for people who go out on public contracts, when we have civil works contracts, and they're paid by the government to supervise the work, so they have to supervise and then bring in the bills to say, yes, this physical work was actually done, because nobody in the office will know what is done on a road, say in Melanie or somewhere else. They get paid, the clerk of works, etc. If they falsify that, then you end up paying for what you have not received. And so a lot of that will happen, and there will be some people, you would have sting operations too. So I'm telling them, I'm forewarning them. So if you have been engaged in these practices and you get caught, don't come and later complain, oh, you have 2 kids or something else, and or you belong to some party or something else. Don't come and complain about that you belong to a party or you have a party card or anything like that. If you get caught, you face the consequences. So I want to make sure that they understand that segment. So I'm going to end here. Thank you.
Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. I want to bring you back to the AFC. Do you think that the party could stand alone ahead of the 2025 general and regional elections, especially given the fact that there are reports of dwindling membership? And my second question is, we would have seen that Dollar Financial has winded down operations in Guyana.
Which?
And Dollar Financial. That's on...
Dollar Financial?
Yes.
Or what's that? I don't follow that too much. What's Dollar Financial?
Well, it's a loan agency, and In April, they claimed that there's geopolitical instability, hence why they winded down operations. I'd like your thoughts on that.
Dollar Financial?
It's a Jamaican company.
They must be tiny, because if I don't know, they're not. I look at the banking system a lot. I see reports from the central bank that go to the Minister of Finance. I see them. I see the concentration of capital, the size of the holdings in the financial system, who owns the assets. I don't even know there's a group called Dollar Financial. It must be people make all sorts. This is one of the most thriving economies in the world. A lot of people, like with any business investment, some people will come and they will fail, not because the government or because of any policy or political instability. In fact, we're a very stable country here, and we have been so for a long while. Even in the 5 months period when we are awaiting the results, other parts of the world would have exploded. In other countries, even the developed world, our people, and it's the credit must go to our people, not the politicians. They just waited. They exercised patience. It shows maturity among our people. And we're a society that is ethnically complex, and yet that happened. We had maturity. And so all of these people who come and they fail, it's not normally because of policies. For everyone maybe who fails, you have two who will succeed. But that's the nature of investment. You put up your restaurant, and you put up a Thai restaurant or a Chinese restaurant, and next door to you another man come and build another restaurant, and your sales plummet by half, and then you want to blame the government for the people not coming to eat your food, or your services are crappy and people don't come there, or your food don't taste good. You blame the government for that. Now, I don't even know what this Dollar Financial, what their rates are if they transfer money out, because you have a lot of money transfer agencies that have very competitive rates. I don't know who they are, so I can't comment about them. But people make all sorts of issue. It could be a Rickford Burke owned this thing too, and this was the conduit for transferring the extortion money. And the extortion now racket is coming to the attention of several law enforcement agencies around the world. So could be Rickford Burke is the principal of this. I don't know who owns it. Yes, the AFC dwindling membership. I don't want to predict what will happen, whether they contest in 2025 or not. I guess they will settle for being the baggage boy of the PNC again, because they can't stand on their own. They will be the baggage boy. That's why Ramjatan clings to Norton Short Tail with like a koala bear clings to its mother. You know, so it clings tight. You can't loosen the grip there. So I don't know whether they would, but it wouldn't really make a difference. Nobody thinks that the AFC is viable any longer, except as a sycophantic arm of the PNC.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Anna Williams, Culture News. It was recently revealed that any claim to the US $2 billion oil spill guarantee must be in accordance with the safety limits outlined in the permits. Can you say if this was considered when the decision was taken to have Exxon pump above the safety limits?
So I've asked the EPA about this question, and they said, as I said before, they're the ones who have to assess this, not the politicians. We made it clear. Like with the audits, we went to the technical people. This is not a question for the politicians. If your technical staff who are responsible for ensuring safety in the country, and these are the people who are trained to do so. In both the ministry and the EPA say that they have reviewed the submissions from ExxonMobil, and that they find that the submissions, that the increase in production above the announced capacity of these vessels is safe, then the politicians have to accept this. We will not, I will never venture to make an independent judgment like that on my own. Glenn Lyle can make that judgment because he's a specialist on these matters, you know. But I'm not a specialist. I have to go to the technical staff, like we did with the audit. People are trained in this sector to review all of these documents. And if they're claiming that is safe and it's in compliance with their act and also with their permitting, then I accept that. I don't second guess them, except if, but I do ask questions. I do ask questions, and one of the questions I ask that they have to clarify is whether this whole question, if you go above rated capacity, whether, because if it doesn't violate your policy. These are questions that I've asked them already. Okay, so I do ask several questions, but I can't second guess technical people. And that's how we work. We allow the technical officers to work. If you do otherwise, it's political interference. Just imagine a minister or the head of a political party say, call the EPA and say, you know, allow Exxon to do this. Then what? We'd be slaughtered, but it would be wrong too. It has to come from those agencies. They have to assess before any decision is taken. And that's the right way of doing the things, and we have done so here. So even on this spill, we have asked, when the permits were given, what is your capacity to manage a spill? Should it take place? Now, nobody in this world can put their neck on the line to say there shall be no spill now in the future. But do you have the capacity to address it and to minimize its impact and to compensate people? So people use like what happened 10 years ago. When the time it took almost to cap or plug the well from which the spill took place, where we can mobilize the capping stock in a matter of days, because the permit says now that you have to have a subscription with an international group, and one has to be resident in the country. Now, Exxon didn't want that. They said it's costly to keep that here. We don't have it in the region. And we said, no, you have to keep it. So if there is a blowout, you can cap it almost immediately and minimize the impact. In lots of other places where you've seen they didn't have that, or they were in remote locations, they couldn't get that out immediately, like in very adverse weather conditions or deep sea and stuff like that. And that caused significantly more damage. So a lot of these questions, you have a robust debate going on within government. And that is why we've decided that we can't rely only on a $600 million one per event insurance or a $2 billion parent guarantee. That we need also to fortify that by having legislation now, laws, not the PSA or an environmental permit, which requires the environmental permit, which requires a guarantee, but also that the law will now force companies who operate here to operate in a particular environment, and should there be any event of this type that we all want to avoid for this country, that they bear full liability for those events. And that's what the law will do. And it will go even beyond the primary producers, but to shipping companies, where there's a big gap now, because there's no big, they don't have to lodge bonds and everything else here. So if there's a spill from a shipping company that's unrelated to Exxon, and they sink there offshore, we don't have the same sort of bond that we have, like with, in this case, with Exxon. However they are, whatever the arguments are, whether it's adequate or inadequate, which will hopefully be addressed by the legislation that we intend to pass before the recess. We made it clear. And before August recess of the Parliament, we want this legislation in place. We've been working on it for some time. So people need to understand all of these things. But I will not venture to give we got technical advice, and it's only the technical advice I can say I speak to here.
Sir, you said you would have reached out to the EPA to ask whether this would breach.
No, I've done so. I've done so.
Have they
already.
responded?
No. They have to give me a full report on all of these issues. So I've done it through the minister and directly to the EPA. So these are additional-ish questions I've asked. But on the assessment whether this is safe, the ministry technical staff said to me, I asked, have you reviewed it? Because we don't know if it's safe. And they said, yes, we've reviewed it, and the EPA has done the same. And both have said it's safe.
On the cost recovery audits, can you say whether there were any further developments or actions taken in regards to the findings of these audits?
No, so I have not followed it directly, because it's the last conversation I had on this matter was that we need to close the first audit. Close it first. You need to formally say. So I have to find out if that was done. And it should have been done, because that was about 3 weeks ago. That they had to write and say, we have a difference of opinion over 214 million now. So that letter closing it with Exxon. So there's no room for negotiation anymore. That's clear. Then you trigger the procedures according to the PSA. You try to meet to see through maybe a mediator to see if you can close the gap, and if not, you go to full arbitration. So that should have been done. The second one, they still are in a back. They still have been writing Exxon and awaiting response on a lot of the issues that you have serialized in the Kaichor News. And now and I hope you acknowledge that it was we who released both audits. So they're no longer secret documents. They're no longer secret documents. The audits have been released already. So because I saw you still said although we released the mining contracts, the large one, you criticize Air Finale for obscure mining contracts, that the provisions are not known in these mining contracts, and you have them. So that's where we are in relation to the audits.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jack. Sure. Just one question from me. Exxon is pursuing further exploration in the High Mara discovery for gas, to check out if there's potential for gas market. Like I recall in 2023, you said that if they're not going to monetize the gas, then it should relinquish back at the section back to the government. So with them doing further exploration, are they now deciding to monetize the gas, or are they pursuing it because Guyana is looking to monetize the gas?
So let me go back to what we decided. So I told you about the strategy, the gas strategy, the discussion paper that went out. We need to finalize that, and that's work that the ministry is doing, ongoing. Through a consultant, they would finalize that. Parallel to that, we tested the market. We went out for expression of interest. They have had some really good, strong firms with good credentials now that said, we believe there is a viable project and we want to work on it. And these are big, very powerful firms that can find maybe the 10 to 15 billion US dollars that you will need to invest in that strategy. When I say 10 to 15 billion US dollars, that's about twice as much as our total savings Guyana in the banking system. So it's a lot of money. So they have selected a company now, the evaluators, and I think it may have gone to the cabinet. I'm not sure if it has gone to the cabinet. Sometimes I go, rarely I go. So it could have gone to the cabinet. So that company now will have to sit down with Exxon. So parallel to that, we had some discussions with Exxon, what I reported, and we said, if you're now moving forward, you got to relinquish. So they now did some studies, and they said, we believe we may be able to move forward with a project. So I explained to you in the past that once we select this company, it will be a tripartite engagement with Exxon, the company, the selected company, and the government of Guyana, and we have to work on a project to monetize the gas. So that's where we are. But they are doing additional work to understand the quantity of gas, the proving of the reserves. Because when you just find gas, you can do a crude estimate of the amount of gas. It's the same thing with oil. When you have a discovery, you don't know how much, what's the size of the reservoir as yet, etc. So they're doing more work on proving the gas reserves. So they have a crude estimate of what the amount of associated gas, which was about 16 trillion cubic feet, I think, of gas some time back. But that has not shifted much, just like the 11 billion. So of barrels of oil. So they need to do more proving, but that doesn't, our position holds. If they don't want to go forward with a project on this, and there are others who may be willing to do it on their own, they'd have to relinquish it. They'd have to relinquish it. We can't have this lost opportunity there. But they also have to relinquish 20% of the entire Stabroek block by October of this year. That is Exxon. So it may include that area, it may not include that area, but if they don't want to move with the gas project, then I believe they have to give up those areas too.
If I may follow up, if I have one follow-up. So if they do this work and they find that it's not, suitable to their needs, does it affect Guyana's plans in any way?
No,
because remember, we still have
there
to pay
are
for it.
others who are very interested who may go with a different scale. Exxon, there is something called cost bank saturation. But I don't want to get into that now because you just get it distorted again. So they're oil producing. They want to focus on oil. Remember, gas now is something that we're pushing for. But you have several projects around the world. Qatar is expanding, the US is expanding in large numbers. We believe we can monetize our gas. We can do it through various sources. We can ship it out through LNG, floating platform, that's one option. We can bring the gas on shore through a bigger pipeline, not the 12-inch, and then use it to generate power to sell into Brazil, because they're buying a lot of their power in northern Brazil from Venezuela. That's a very lucrative venture. We can then use it for petrochemical industry. So we believe that there is big use for the gas, they may not, I'm not saying this as a sure thing, but I'm just hypothetically saying, they may not have the same priority as us. And then when you look at the cost bank saturation too, that is, they line up projects and they don't want to go beyond a certain point from the cost bank. Then they may just decide that, we don't want to go with it. The returns are not high enough for us compared to the production of oil. So then another company may believe that the returns are good enough, or their technology would allow them to do a different scale operation. So we're very much involved in this, pushing to get this done. Yes.
Marcel Thomas from the Stabrook News. My questions are two of basically updates. One, could you provide an update on the Linseca arbitration? Where is that? And it's a follow-up to that also. Has this arbitration stalled any of the works over at Wales?
So I can answer the second question. The other one, I don't know exactly at what stage it is, whether the submissions have to be made, etc. I'll ask Brassington to clarify that to you, but it has not stalled the project from moving forward.
Everything is as go.
Yes.
And the second update is on the oil blocks auction. You had said the partnership with Qatar, I think Total and Petronas, that one was furthest.
So that is cleared the cabinet already, and it's moving forward. I have a report. Most of the others, they're still in discussion on the PSA, because a lot of them have either issues with the PSA, the legal terms. We've made it clear that we're not the fiscal terms, but the other obligations. They're saying it's too rigid. We're having discussions. Some are still looking for partners. Some are still looking for partners and operators, because their original submission, they couldn't conclude those. So unless those issues are dealt with beforehand in the negotiation, it's not going to go to cabinet to make the final thing. Only when we're sure, then we take it to the cabinet. And the one that went to the cabinet was the one with Qatar. So I don't know now, they received the cabinet approval, how far in the routine, it's a routine matter now to conclude. So please ask Vikram. That's a routine matter.
So as of today, they're still the only one to
The only one that went to cabinet so far.
And my last question is on the Linden Independence celebration. You listed the reasons the opposition would have given for Lindeners to not attend.
Yeah.
Are you attending?
Oh, I have some work, but I may now that you ask me, I will have to attend. I will have to go. Now you put me on the spot. I was supposed to do some additional stuff in another part. Now that I criticize the afternoon, I have to end up going. But no disrespect, the whole cabinet will be there, and I'm going to go too. Yes. Like, you know what my other schedule was, yeah. So now I don't know.